Hi there. My name is Michael Gwynn. I'm the Director of Strategic Projects at FEITIAN. Today we're going to bring you a presentation along with a few colleagues and a visitor, and we hope you get a lot out of it. The topic is moving to zero trust with passwordless biometric keys. Again, I'm Michael Gwynn. I'm talking to you live from Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'll be joined shortly by Brandon Nolan, who is the Global Digital Identity Lead at Avanade. And in a little bit, we'll have a special introduction by Gautam Veech, who's the Chief Revenue Officer from FEITIAN Technologies. So without further ado, let me go into kind of what we'll go over, and just up front, some admin notes. If you have questions, there's a question area on the side. Please be sure to add questions. In the interest of times, we're going to continue the presentation going so we can get the whole presentation done within 26 minutes, and then we'll do questions and answers after that. If we missed your question, we'll try to follow up with you directly. I want to remind you that we'll put a copy of the a PDF of the PowerPoint and a link to that. And then we also will have a link to a survey form that we all request that you please complete and fill out for us to give us feedback and your thoughts. And then one last thing, at the end of the presentation, we'll be doing, providing a special promotional offer for the biometric security keys. So now let's go over what the topics are that we're going to talk about. We'll talk a little bit about passwordless, zero trust, some of the principles of zero trust, and a new Microsoft Tap feature that helps enable the biometric security keys. And then Brandon will go over some of the insights on adoption with projects and some of the observations that he's had from himself personally and his team. And then we'll help you to create a path to get started today. And then we'll discuss some of the importance of using the biometric security keys. All right, so without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Gautam Veech.
Thank you, Michael, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar. I appreciate your time. So I wanted to start the presentation with one quote that we at FEITIAN hold very dearly. And I'll read it out loud. FEITIAN is on a mission to eradicate passwords. We believe passwords are antiquated, ineffective, inconvenient, they're vulnerable, and they're extremely expensive. We have a much better solution. And I'm sure you have the word that caught your attention is extremely expensive, and you're wondering, like, how can passwords be extremely expensive? And I think you kind of get the hint of what we're trying to say here. And let me get into a little bit more depth. But before I walk you through more depth, let me cover some of the trends and drivers, some aspects around ROI and compliance, which are big drivers and something that you should pay attention to. So I'm going to read from left to right and keep going down. So let me read the first one, HBR, Harvard Business Review. What HBR says is that most of the attacks that happen today, the cybersecurity attacks that happen, are really happening on the inside because of human error, could be because of employees. And I'll add to this, it can be because of third party, it can be because of contractors, it could be anybody, right? But what essentially this tells you is that we spend a lot of effort trying to protect our moat. We are spending a lot of effort in trying to put the most latest technology to protect intruders coming from the outside, whether it's a firewall, whether it's a web filtering system, encryption. But a lot of these attacks are really happening inside, for malicious reasons or because of error, and hackers are taking, advantage of that. Next one, Tech Republic and also Gartner has projected that in a few years, passwords in any case be extinct. They've been there for a long time, and we know they are, probably the worst protection that you might have, but they have been there for legacy reasons, but they're going to go away. The next one, Microsoft is actually putting that as a strategic plan. So they're not just saying this will happen as a trend. They're putting that they're going to eliminate the passwords from their identity directory for good, right? So that is a plan. Then there are other initiatives like CSI is one of them, which require all containers that come in to be MFA'd. So that's one of the 4 core tenets. Secure banking, we have seen like a rapid increase in banking customers coming to us to ask for some kind of MFA solution because their clients or customers have been compromised. And these are like older generation, like older population, that have weak passwords. And now these hackers are going after them and then using that to compromise the bank or compromise these accounts. And that's a big problem as well, because it can be like millions of dollars of stolen money. Cybersecurity insurance, this is a new one I learned 6 months ago. I don't know if you have ever, your organization has looked at this, but I would encourage you to look into it. And what this essentially means is that, like, in case your company is hacked, right, the insurance will protect you from liabilities and costs and all of those. But guess what? These insurance companies are now requiring MFA if you really want to reduce your premiums. And so that's another driver, So these are very interesting trends that we're seeing around it. TSP is another one, if you want pension, you need a MFA in place. Remote access is another one, as we see more explosion in worker population, people are remote. And so there is a need for MFA for, really, multi-level security. And the last one is the compliance drivers like the NIST 863, specifically the authentication assurance levels, they require MFA as well, all right? Just want to share that there are a lot of different aspects to this. Now, this chart I wanted to really quickly go over. If you look at the way to look at this is on the left, you see inconvenient, right is convenient, high is, on the top is high security, and then you have low security. And we start from the left. OOBV is out of bandwidth voice, OOBM is out of bandwidth messaging, and we know that these are still prevalent. So it's a scary fact that some of the largest banks and largest institutions still use text-based messaging, although we know the fact that that is being compromised multiple times. In fact, some people argue that OOBM, which is the messaging, is worse than a password. It is more vulnerable than a password because messaging is easily hackable with a man-in-the-middle attack, and there's so many sophisticated ways of being able to get access to it. So we definitely do not recommend that. If you go a little up on the yellow one, OTP, one-time password, we do sell tokens, and I would say a lot of the businesses still use OTP, which is great, but it is not very convenient. As you can see, it is fairly secure, but it's not very convenient. It is secure because it uses a seed password, uses shared password. But then if you look at the X509, which is the PKI, the true PKI, that is definitely very secure, but it's also very inconvenient. It requires like a lot of investment to like really get the X509 infrastructure in place and stuff like that. Now, if you move to the right, so the middle quadrant, you'll see the passwordless MFA. It is more secure. It's not very convenient, not very inconvenient, because now you have to not only enter your password, but also an MFA. So yeah, it's more secure, but it's also kind of more inconvenient. Now, let's move into the holy grail on the right side. You see mobile, mobile authenticators and, other ways of mobile, MFA. Those are definitely more secure, and they are more convenient because now you're using your phone. You're not, trying to read out a text and, enter numbers, squiggly numbers and stuff like that. It's like but again, it is not as convenient as FIDO2, which is what you have in the blue box, which is what we proudly, and we're going to show you more details, we proudly share is the biometric keys that we have, which is really what we call truly passwordless, because you use what you have, right? Your fingerprint, nobody can steal that. These are disconnected devices. Nobody can hack into it because they're not connected to the network. And they're highly, the efficacy is, very high because they use PKI. And so we'll cover more details, but they're based on FIDO principles. And so there's no shared secret. They're almost non-hackable. All right, so I'm going to rush through the slides for sake of time. Now, FIDO, so what are the key elements of FIDO? So the first one, again, reading from left to right, FIDO stands for Fast Identity Online, and it fixes the secure password anomaly. Again, this is something that's very funny because, all the IT admins want your password to be extremely secure, right? 16 characters long, I'm kidding, 8 characters long, uppercase, lowercase, dots, special characters. No, not that special character, only this special character. And you multiply that by 90 different websites that you go to, it can be mind-boggling. At least it drives me crazy, right? And FIDO is trying to solve that problem by not having to have any of that, right? Second one, strong authentication. What does this mean? This means that it's based on PKI, meaning your password is your password, right? If somebody has a password, you're done, right? You hack. Whereas in the case of PKI, they actually give your key, your public key, over to people to say, okay, use this to challenge us. And I'm going to show you the flow. But it's used to like say, okay, yeah, challenge me. But the private key is what really matters. Private key is really what establishes the authenticity of you. And that is stored in our biometric keys or our hardware keys in a secure element. And we'll go into more details, but it's like extremely secure and it's pretty much non-hackable. Okay, next one, PKI is designed to protect you from phishing, account takeover, man-in-the-middle attacks. Next one, flexibility, various form factors. So we provide you different form factors. Next one is connectivity. We allow you to do Bluetooth. If you don't want to stick in the keys to anything, we allow that. We allow NFC for phones. We allow USB, different connection methodologies. Next one is these are plug and play. So in terms of the ROI and the cost to invest and deploy, I mean, these are based on CTAP and WebAuthn. So as long as your applications are enabled, we are FIDO compliant. These are pretty much plug and play. All right. And the second to last is technology protocols. We can load in, PKI, FIDO, OTP, all of these because these are all Java applets for us. So we can program these on the fly, and we have a program called MYOD. I will not go into the details, but we can very dynamically create, the keys that are appropriate for you. And the last one is, again, you're talking about, biometric. Our biometric keys, what is special about them is that the fingerprint stays on the keys, and that allows you to be compliant for GDPR rules. And because of COVID and stuff like that, that makes total sense. You see a huge demand because of these, because of the changing paradigm in this world. All right, so I'm going to skip through this and come to the main step, and then I'll explain this over to you. So the way the FIDO, or the PKI really works is that the user logs in. So you look at step number one, user logs in with a security key to a server, right? The server then sends a response back, is more like a challenge, right? The server says, okay, I have your public key. Here's the challenge. It encrypts that, whatever that challenge is with that, public key. Now it comes to you. You use your biometric. The biometric is, I would say, like a third level authentication because you have your FIDO and stuff like that, but you're also using your biometric. So the biometric, when it matches your fingerprint, it enables and unlocks the circuitry, which then releases the FIDO token. And that's step number 4, is the security key returns the response using that, encryption, basically the decryption with your private key. So think of it like asymmetric key pair. The server has your public key and you have your private key stored in a secure element. Only you can have that private key. Nobody else can take it from you. These devices are tamper-proof, so there's no way to break in and get your keys. And so when you do this challenge response, then the step number 5, the server verifies who you are because you were able to use your private key. So the server can send thousands of responses, but there's only one person, that's you, that can actually decrypt it because you have the private key. All right. With that, I'll hand it over to Michael. He's going to cover into how dangerous not having an MFA is, and he's going to cover some stats that are going to blow your mind away. So Michael, take it from here. Michael, I think you're on mute. Michael, you might be on mute.
You're on mute.
Sorry. All right, officially unmuted now. Apologize for that. Wanted to let you know that, Gautam, I appreciate your presentation. It's very clear that there is a world of bad things out there, and we're using the latest and greatest technologies with the biometric FIDO security keys to help keep our clients and the organizations safe. So I want to proceed now, and I'll go over some of the specific slides that we have on the hacking issues. So these are from, this information is from the FIDO Alliance. And as a reminder, FEITIAN is a standing member of the FIDO Alliance. In fact, we are a seated board member, have been for some time. On the FIDO Alliance. Our products are FIDO certified, so we get all of our products cleared and checked by FIDO for our security keys. Some information on passwords. A lot of this is information you may or already know, but I wanted to make sure that we share that most of the issues with breaches are from passwords. We all have many, many accounts, and to keep track of all those and to use the different passwords for those, that's where we get into trouble. One password, if that gets into the wrong hands, can be used to try all of your accounts or many of the popular accounts in the hack called credential stuffing. So that's with 51% of the users of the passwords are reused. That can create some serious issues. The other thing with passwords, as Gautam mentioned, in terms of cost, there is a significant cost associated with not only the breaches, but also the help desk of recovering a password and setting passwords and updating passwords. So they all come at a cost for the organization. So it's a little bit more about the breaches. Many of them are caused by credential theft. The passwords are duplicated, and 50% of the employees aren't, the apps that are used by the employees in many of the enterprise organizations are not approved. And the issue with that, or the issue of using a phone where the enterprise does not control what is on the phone and what gets into the phone, is that it opens yourself up to be hacked through the phone or computer computer that you're using. And that's why, as Gautam had mentioned, the FEITIAN security keys are not connected. They're not connected to the internet. And in that case, while they're not being used, there's no way somebody can hack into those.
Michael, do you mind if I add a point?
Sure, Brendan.
All right. So my background, and I'll introduce myself here in a little bit, but my background has been mainly around compromise recovery. And one of the things that we've started to see more and more of is the awareness around when you're in an incident, trying to figure out where the attacker got in. A lot of these times we know it's through phishing and things like that. So in your environment, you have good control over what you can control, right? In your environment, and you can put good policies in place and you can do all the right things, but there is nothing that you can do to stop the users outside of a paper policy from using that same password in another online service, LinkedIn per se, or anything like that. So they may be using their passwords that they have to change regularly in-house at your organization for their services. And if those services get compromised or that user gets phished, they're just a stone's throw away from that attacker trying that password that they phished on that service against your organization by just a quick social lookup on LinkedIn of where they work at. So we've seen this happen many times, and this is why it's important to understand that passwords need to go away.
Okay. And I just want to follow up on that. That's obviously great information, Brandon. I appreciate you reminding us on that. The FEITIAN keys, the security keys with the FIDO protocol, each time they're used to connect and be registered with a relying party, they create an asymmetric key pair. So when the security keys are used in different applications or with different relying parties, they're not reusing the passwords. And a lot of people, it's a relatively interesting concept for people to understand that unlike a password where, like you said, they're using it for different applications, it opens yourself up to security issues. With the FIDO security keys, you have an asymmetric key pair, and all that means simply is a private key that never leaves the security device, and then a public key that goes out, and it's just that, it's public. If anybody gets that, they can't do anything without the private key. So I am going to continue. Was there anything else on that, Brandon? Just following up with you on that?
No, sorry, I couldn't find the mute button.
All right. I think hopefully I'll be the only one that does part of the presentation on mute today. All right, so I'm going to go back to the slides and just give you the update. This is from Microsoft, that from their research, that 99.9% of the attacks can be blocked with some form of multi-factor authentication. So it's important to have multi-factor authentication, and if you're going to do it, you're going to look for one of the best applications of it with the FIDO security keys, and then good, better, best, using a biometric even better identifies who it is that's actually accessing your device. So continuing on, I'm going to shift gears and just talk a little bit about the overview of Zero Trust. So Zero Trust has been around for a while, and I'll go a little bit into the history, but there are many different definitions out there of what Zero Trust is. And I want to make sure that there isn't any one specific answer that's better than the others. There's a lot of companies that each have their own flavoring to what Zero Trust means. But I wanted to make sure that you saw that NIST has a whole document on Zero Trust, their special pub 800-207. That was out in 2020. And I think they're going to add an update onto that. But Microsoft, AWS, and many other companies also have their definitions of Zero Trust. It's important for whatever system that you're using, it can go into that Zero Trust component where you're basically everyone's verified and no one is trusted regardless of where they are and who they are. All right, a little bit about the background. This starts at 2003, but actually I found through research that the term of Zero Trust goes back actually into the 90s on the with using the term, and of course it's grown, and the depth of it has definitely become more complicated. One of the founders of the concept is said to be John Kindervag from Forrester. In 2010, I have a link to the presentation where he does the initial kind of overview presentations with it. And then Google was involved with an organization at an event, Beyond Corp, where they did more into Zero Trust. And again, the NIST publication that's out as of 2020 with speaking specifically about Zero Trust architecture. I wanted to also let you know that the naming of Zero Trust could be Zero Trust Architecture, and Zero Trust Network Access or Network Architecture. So you may see a variety of those names. When we say Zero Trust, we're kind of incorporating everything in our discussion today. Right. This is one application of Zero Trust with three specific principles provided by Microsoft on their specific Zero Trust applications. They want to do three things to keep their system secure in the Zero Trust. They want to verify explicitly. That means regardless of who it is, they're going to check who the user is, where they are, what device they're using, and a number of other items on that to verify it. So no free passes here for high-end users or other users. The second principle is the least privilege access, so that whoever has the access, they have what is called JIT, or just in time or just enough access, so that anybody who potentially could hack into their site doesn't have free reign over the entire system. They only have a very limited access of what the actual user was allowed to see. And it's only what they need to do their job and be productive. And then the third principle is to assume the breach. And that is in the previous standard models, without Zero Trust, it was layers. Once you got to the next layer, you can basically go throughout that layer. And one analogy is to, like an office building, where if you make it to the second floor, you have access to all of the offices that are on the second floor. Same if you get to the third floor, et cetera. When you get to a breach now in zero trust, you want to make sure that it's really enclosed and there's no lateral movements. So you may be able to break into the second floor, and that person who has it might have access to one office building, one office on that floor, but you won't have access to the whole floor. So hopefully that analogy carries. And of course, we're talking digital terms about the architecture. Right, a new feature that Microsoft enabled that is in public review now is called the tap feature. And this is a temporary access pass. And what this allows the admins to do is very easily set up a situation where the users can gain access to their account and set up their security key. And the good thing about this is it can be used with initial users, so they may never, ever even have a password, a true password. So it's basically an OTP function that is controlled and or originated by the admin that allows the users to sign on and register a key right away. And there's no step up from a simple password to now using a biometric security key. Just to show how that works, in the admin controls for Azure, you want to go into the authentication methods, and then you're going to add an authentication method. And the good thing about that is you can add the authentication method for an individual or a section or a group of users very easily. So that when that goes out, the users can start very easily to function with their security key. That was always a challenge of how to do the step-up security, and how do you have the users register. And it's also a good way to bring in new individuals so they can start the process without ever having to do the passwords. And if you can imagine, I know Gotham went through the various requirements for passwords, but as we all know, it's the updates. It's been 30, 60 days. Now you have to think of a brand new one. Now it has to have all those features to it. So when you have that, when you have passwordless and the security key now, you don't need to do any of that. Right, so this is where I'm going to go into the major phases of zero trust. I'm going to see if we can do this with all of us on just for a quick minute as we hand off. Gotham, was there any thoughts on some of the things that I discussed and reviewed there? Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
No worries. No, I think you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Great. So, I think what you shared is very relevant in terms of zero trust. We all understand that security is not a, silver bullet. There's no one thing that can actually, solve the issues around cybersecurity and vulnerability. It is really an architecture. It's not one product. It's not one solution. It's more like an architecture of things. And you have to design ground up, right? Like Brandon said, you have to look at your enterprise. You have to look at how your enterprise operates, what kind of systems you have, right? And what kind of architecture you need, what kind of business operations do you have? For example, do you expose your enterprise to the web, or are you a closed-end system? Based on that, you'll find out vulnerabilities that exist. The concept of zero trust, what's very interesting is, all it's saying is, do not trust any transaction as having already been trusted, meaning every transaction, whether it's human to human, human to server, server to server, device to device, IoT to IoT, that's going to explode in the future as well. This is the time we need to start looking at no, there is no trust whatsoever. Every transaction has to be authenticated. And so when we saw in the beginning of our slide, we saw the steps like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that will apply in pretty much every transaction. So the thing I want to bring here is, imagine for every transaction, if you have to verify with your password, I would go crazy for sure, right? And that I already do go crazy with just this minimum password I have to enter every time. But imagine for every transaction. And how about IoT? Imagine the future, you have one device connecting to another device. How would they verify the passwords? And I think that's where having a FIDO kind of layer where device-to-device authentication is happening automatically. I think that's going to be very important in the paradigm of zero trust.
Yeah, it allows us to do things we couldn't do before, right? Because that's not a tenable solution to have to log on and have these systems log on. There's just too many variables there, and just doesn't make for a good experience. So what I'll do now, Michael, unless you've got something to add, is I'll go ahead and we'll put that slide back up. I'll do a quick introduction of who I am and why I'm here today. And then we'll get going on some of the other slides. All right, great. So again, we did a quick introduction in the beginning. I'm Brandon Nolan. I have the great honor of shepherding our digital identity business globally at Avanade. And, as part of that, partnering with folks like FEITIAN, with other partners that we have, we look to bring, what we're doing in the field, what challenges that we're solving with our customers every day, to you guys in webinar format, a lot of cases. So I'll go ahead and get into, the kind of the meat of the presentation here on what I'm going to present. And, I would say that probably some of you are looking at this slide and you're saying, well, this looks a bit familiar. And it should, if you've looked at Microsoft's Zero Trust Framework, we actually took Microsoft's Zero Trust Framework and we expounded on it to better fit an enterprise point of view. And to have an effective Zero Trust strategy, like Gotham pointed out, you need to look at Zero Trust holistically across each of these domains. Today, we're going to be specifically talking about identity and device. And you've probably heard of these two before, but these are the two that really make up what we refer to as passwordless, or the passwordless journey. So we'll go ahead and move to the next slide here. All right. So historically, as far as adoption goes, we found that people are most interested in hardware security keys, those organizations that have had a cyber incident or that they're looking to establish high security for key sets of the most valuable credentials in the enterprise, or maybe those that, have had regulatory or compliance requirements and the CISO is addressing those with hardware keys. We look to help with, MFA, 2FA, and good control today by securing legacy authentication methods. Then we take those processes and the same hardware to protect modern auth as well. So this can grow with you. So you implement keys now to help you mitigate the risk that you have, but then it grows with you as you mature your infrastructure and your identity stack. These will grow with you. The processes will grow with you. So some of the top use cases, again, protecting privileged user credentials. We've got great integrations with CyberArk, Azure Active Directory, AD, et cetera. And it can be thought of similar to using smart cards to time limit those credentials, right? So you have to have the key in place and use your PIN if you're using one of the tap keys, or if you're using a biometric, you plug the device in your USB and you use your biometric to authenticate. These can also be useful for, there's a lot of folks still doing Red Forest type scenarios and recovering from compromise and establishing that good confidence with your directory administration. That's one of the first things that you need to gain a footing in your environment when you're dealing with those types of incidents. You're responding. You need to be able to say, I have positive control over my my identities in my environment, and to do that, you have to use out of band type technologies and strategies to help recover those credential sets. This could also help you with supply chain problems as well. We talked about the privileged credentials, but that just doesn't sit inside of the four walls of your building. That is extended out to your vendors and your infrastructure outsourcing teams. You have folks that are sitting in delivery centers with no access to mobile devices, and this helps with providing that strong authentication to those folks as well. So shared devices, mobile restricted environments, if you've got labs or data centers, where you can't bring those mobile devices into, frontline workers where they're sharing those devices. And then obviously something near and dear to all of us over the past, probably a year plus here is remote workforce. And how do we enable them to create those secure channels back into the organization to do the work that they need to do. So a couple of key things down here at the bottom. I'm going to make a really bold statement, and somebody can challenge me on it or not, but I say and tell my clients all the time that easily phishable email or SMS factors are as equally unsafe as just using passwords alone. We skirted around that a bit at the beginning of this, but I'm going to come out and say it. You're a step away, if you're using email, from an attacker grabbing a hold of your email and using those credentials on behalf of you and elevating their rights and taking hold of your environment. SMS is not much better than email. So we shouldn't be looking at these to solve for our edge case environments around, maybe the infrastructure outsourcing things. And it's too often that I hear customers saying, well, how do you solve for this? Well, you need to solve for that thinking differently. And you need to think differently by, adopting newer technology to solve for those types of problems like a hardware key. I would say that they're not even considered a stumbling block any longer for attackers when you're using this email and SMS factor. And they're only slightly effective, I would say, against bots. So I also recommend you reviewing the NIST 863-3B, and this is going to give you criteria around a level of assurance and what that really means to you. So as a decision maker in your enterprise or an influencer in your enterprise, you need to understand when you're looking at these types of keys, why are they important? How do they compare to others? And that assurance level gives you the language to figure that out and what it actually means to you and how it should apply in your specific authentication journeys. So why biometrics? I would say, when we first started using hardware security keys, the first thing that it was associated with was passwordless. So when we started using them with passwordless, but you still have to use a PIN and you have to type in that PIN every time, our users were giving us feedback saying, well, it feels like I'm still solving, I'm still having a password here, even though the PIN, we know that the PIN works differently. The PIN stays locally on that device and is associated with that device. But for the user's experience perspective, they feel like now they're just typing in a password that's called a PIN. So biometrics is great in this type of environment and to solve for these use cases because it gives a better experience. So instead of just using your PIN and using the key every time, you're able to use your fingerprint. Now you still have to have that PIN as part of the initial setup, but going forward, that PIN is really made is there for backup. So like if the biometric scanner for some reason isn't using your fingerprint correctly, you can default back to the PIN and use that PIN as well. I would say, Michael mentioned something about having the password resets being a certain amount. I think that this is where this comes into place as well. And we've got, a few pros and cons here to help you determine the factors that can assist in dramatically reducing that help desk and operational aspects. Where those password resets can average to be between $60 and $70 per reset. These keys themselves don't cost that much. And if you can put these out there, you can reduce that number of help desk calls and have these keys in place. You have better security. You're reducing the load on your help desk. I think it's a win-win, and that's the message we've been hearing from our clients. A lesson learned on biometrics is that, not good or bad. It's just something to be aware of. The app that you're accessing, the app itself influences that user experience of the biometric for the user. So as with everything that you deploy in your enterprise, you need to test the apps that you have with the biometric security keys to better understand that experience in your individual environment, because it may vary based on the app. For instance, we had an app one time, we had the app registered, and from the time you tap the biometric for it to actually register the authentication from the bio key, it had a slight delay, which fed into a poor user experience. We had to troubleshoot and figure out what was going on with that. So again, just do the testing that you would normally do. Don't skip the testing on these, and you'll be in a good place. All right. Gautam, I think you wanted to talk about this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Brandon. That was very insightful. I really love what you said, that these keys are not that expensive. And I think that's the beauty, I would say, that if you look at the cost of these keys versus the kind of return they give you, right? 99% of attacks can be blocked. It's almost a no-brainer that for $20 or whatever, if you're getting a non-biometric, you're getting biometric, it's a little bit more, you're getting such peace of mind, right? So if you remember that quadrant that we had, high security, low security, convenience, and all that, you are getting a PKI, which is like an asymmetric key pair, the strongest technology that exists, for $20. And what Michael shared with you are there are ransomware attacks that are happening. And this is increasing, folks. This is increasing, right? People from third world countries that figured out a way to go for the easiest route, which is passwords, right? They know that a lot of people hate passwords. I do. I've been in cybersecurity for 20 years, and I hate passwords because I can't remember them. So they have figured that out. The human element is like your brain cannot remember a complex password, but the computer wants a complex password. And that's where the anomaly is. And that's where these hackers are looking at arbitrage and saying, okay, we will exploit this human behavior that people cannot remember. And we are seeing these ransomware attacks, and they're not pretty. We have spoken with consumers, and it's not pretty at all. And so, what we want to present is this, but the biometric key. So what you'll see here is, it looks complicated, but it's really simple. And I want to show you on the top, it just shows you how our cards are. We have fingerprint cards, but the same concept, if you look at the second diagram where it shows you all the arrows and the blues and the orange, that's the circuitry that actually how it works, the biometric works. And that applies to all our biometric products, not just the card, all right? So let's go on the right. And so let me first explain that diagram actually. So the black box is the fingerprint sensor. That is really the round sensor you'll see on our some of our products. It could be square. That's where you land your fingerprint, right? Your thumb or your finger. The orange one is called the microcontroller. That is basically the extraction engine, right? That's where it looks at your fingerprint as an image and then tries to figure out what that really means, and it extracts it based on its own proprietary algorithm to create that into a reference template. So now if you move into the blue box, you see that the MCU passes that reference template over to the secure element, and then that's where the matching happens. So let's look on the right. I want to just cover this on the right. You see the bullet points. Let's read them step by step, and I can explain. So new fingerprint image is automatically enrolled. A lot of people ask like, okay, what do you have to do to enroll a fingerprint, right? Is it complicated? Does it require different processes? And the answer is very simple. We can show you demos at some point if you want to connect with us. Michael will be happy to show you a demo, and we have recorded demos as well. It is like extremely simple to implant your fingerprint, store it in the secure element, and you're good to go. After that, you do not need passwords if your application supports FIDO and WebAuthn and CTAP, those kind of things, right? Number two, on-card sensor enrolls your fingerprint. So we have sensors on the card, on the keys, right? You do not need external sensors to extract the information. Number three, it scans your fingerprint image and it transfers it to the microcontroller, like basically the orange box. And next, the fingerprint algo in the MCU, the microcontroller, extracts that fingerprint image and it stores it as a reference template. I think we already covered this, but I just want to go step by step. The next part is very important, and we are very proud of, that the MCU, the microcontroller, has to be a low power, meaning these are like very small devices and they cannot expect very high power requirements. So we've designed it in a way that requires very little power, but it's able to compute very high-end computation. So it's able to extract the templates, extract the fingerprint image and create that into template and stuff like that in a very cost-effective way. And that's something that we're very proud of our innovation. Next step, the reference template is then stored in the secure element, the blue box. Now, a lot of people also wonder, okay, they say, well, now I'm storing my fingerprint on a device, and what if I lose the device? Am I screwed? Because now the hacker has my fingerprint. Isn't that scary? And what we say is actually it's more scary to have your fingerprint in a centralized device, like typically what people are used to. They enter buildings, they put their fingerprint, right? What you see in different places. That, number one, is very risky because now your fingerprint is in the cloud or is on a server. And if a hacker hacks into that server, then your fingerprint is exposed, right? Number two, according to GDPR rules, there are a lot of compliance rules. Now they are banning that or saying, well, that's not compliant anymore. And so our products are compliant to GDPR. And number three, because of COVID, nobody wants to touch that thing anymore. Nobody wants to touch a sensor anymore because we don't know who's touched it before, right? And so we are seeing huge demand on our biometric products because it is your fingerprint, it is your product, it is clean, it is stored in the secure element, which is CCEAL 6+, meaning Common Criteria EL 6+. And even if you lose it, nothing happens to it. And the final thing is when your fingerprint matches the template. Yeah.
I was just going to add one other quick thing, and the security of the fingerprint is that the image that is stored is not a scanned image of the biometric. It's even more secure than that it is an array of points from the scan of the biometric. So that if somebody goes in there, they can't recreate the actual image. So it's not a stored picture.
Exactly.
So I just want to add that onto the security.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great point. So what you see in the orange box in the MCU is basically the MCU is taking your image and extracting that into a reference template, meaning it is pretty much destroying the image, right? The image is not required anymore. So what is stored, what Michael mentioned is a very important point. What is stored in the secure element is just a reference template, and only our processing algo understands how to match. So think of it like your fingerprint image is converted into abstract numbers and data points, and that is matched by the secure element. Only our algo understands that. And even if you lose your biometric product, and even if the hacker is very sophisticated, like, is a PhD from Stanford and can break into your secure element, which has not happened ever, but if that happens also, they will not get anything. It'll be basically a data point. So it is built in such a strong, and thoughtful way. And now imagine the convenience, right? All this is very complicated. You don't need to understand this. All you need to know is you land your fingerprint and it unlocks things. No longer do you need a password. No longer do you have to change your password every 3 months. That's it. And then you can use the same device across multiple different websites, right? So you're not having to remember 100 different passwords. It's just one key, and that kind of takes care of everything. So back to Brandon.
All right, great. Thank you for that. That was really insightful. I would say, we've got about 10 minutes left here. I'm going to try to speed this up a bit. So just a quick summary of what this slide is actually saying is that a passwordless journey is that we want to use passwords less until we can be passwordless. So we can start. I said before, we could start today, even if we have all legacy authentication protocols in place, and then move to modern authentication. In these hardware security keys can help you in that journey to move quicker along the path. So an example could be, you start by deploying that password replacement offer, such as, you deploy Windows Hello for Business to your end user systems. You have them establish that PIN so they can start getting used to that process, what that looks like, that experience when they log into their systems. And then we want to use those passwords less. So from that, we need to be able to carry that strong authentication through to the line of business apps. So we start enrolling, registering those apps, your on-premise apps, your SaaS apps into Azure AD. So you have that seamless SSO and access presence. And then that strong authentication now can be carried from your login of your computer into these apps. And when we do this, what we're doing is we're really changing that behavior and psychology of the users from just typing in passwords whenever they're prompted to actually pausing and thinking why they are prompted. So it takes some time to get to that point, but we've seen this happen, and that is really powerful when they stop and pause and they're like, why am I being presented with a password? I never have to use my password. So that's a win. And then next we transition and remove the ability for users to use those passwords regularly, and they're now dependent on these new methods. And this is where most of the organizations that have started on this journey, they've gotten to a point, because the last block here, this is really the culmination of the vision of passwordless. And when we can now become passwordless and remove these passwords from the identity directories that we have, this is something that's down the road. This achieves that security promise that Microsoft is making, but there's not really products readily available for enterprise adoption at this step yet. So that's why you would see like Avanade and Microsoft are at this level right here. Okay. All right, so this is a slide, again, we said that we're going to give you guys copies of these slides in a PDF so you can go back and use this. This is to kind of help you figure out where you are in your journey, and where you should start. Where do you need to go? What do you need to be thinking about? This could also help you put together a proof of concept, and we'll talk about kind of an example of a proof of concept in the next slides. And again, leverage these slides in your organization and start having these conversations. So an example proof of concept, you would target maybe one of the scenarios that we had talked about previously, and maybe that scenario is something like, I need to get MFA in front of all of my line of business applications, whether they're SaaS or on-premise. Well, you need to start small. That's a big chunk of work that you're talking about doing. So starting small and figuring that out, you would want to focus on deploying the pieces that need to be in place. And those pieces are Windows Hello for Business. You get that PIN policy in place. You need to make sure that a set of devices for your proof of concept are co-managed and rolled into AAD, or have Intune on them and they're co-managed. You enable that Active Directory single sign-on for at least one app in the environment, so we can prove this out and what that experience is going to look like. A SAML-based app, modern authentication type app is going to reduce that timeline on getting that app registered. Then you enabled passwordless credentials in Azure AD. And then you deploy the security keys, the training, and the communication for that. And this is something that we can do in roughly around 30 days, proof of concept, get that in there, see what that feels like in the environment. And then that's going to help you really drive together what's your point of view and how this should roll out in your organization. Couple of key driving questions I always try to work towards is, when I implement these keys, what actually am I able to take out from a cost perspective? Do I have overlapping risk mitigations like softwares and processes? Because these keys are now an out-of-band key that provides you good confidence in your authentication. You may have software in your environment that you have put in place to mitigate a risk, that this key now is solving for that risk. So you might be able to have cost takeout of those software solutions. And then from an operational lens perspective, what does this look like for my organization? I think this is, something that we hear about quite often, and I'm pleased to say that FEITIAN has a solution to help with that. The operations of getting keys to people, and I lost my key. How do I get a new key? And the logistics around that. So, Michael, did you want to say just a quick message on that?
Brandon, I appreciate that. We have a number of different ways to do it. It would kind of be lengthy to go into detail, but kind of the popular way du jour is that we have a shared work page, web page, where the SSO from the organization can access it, and the users can sign in, complete their transaction without ever having to exchange funds for that, and it's billed to the corporate organization. So that's kind of the popular way. The other thing is that if there's a way that an organization wants to do it, we're very flexible in that, Brandon. Thank you.
That's a tremendous user experience, right? You as a user, I need to be able to get a new key. How do I empower the users or the managers of those users to initiate that, get that key, get it sent to them? Thanks for sharing that. So just a quick note on who Avanade is. We've been talking about, you've probably heard, me mention Avanade. You heard Michael mention Avanade. Avanade was founded in 2000. So we've been around for a little while now. We are a joint venture between Accenture and Microsoft to bring Microsoft products forward into the enterprise. And I like to kind of consider us as we're Accenture's Microsoft engine. So our heritage is steeped in methodical delivery process, which you would expect from Accenture, but that excellent technical depth. And we serve more than 1,200 clients worldwide, which consists of about 46% of the Global 500 and 40% of the Fortune 500. All right, thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Michael.
Gotcha. Appreciate that, Brandon. And it's very important that, Avanade is recognized for not only what they do, what they have done, and then what they're doing in the future as they're continuing to grow with the technology. Just real quick, FEITIAN, about us. Our U.S. headquarters is out of Santa Clara, California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. We have a mission to provide secure, innovative, and value-priced security products. And we go across several of the different industries, including authentication, identification, access management, and we are now putting a new emphasis on secure payment. So if you have questions and as payment gets tied in more and more with authentication, FEITIAN is happy to provide some great new and innovative, as well as value-priced payment options. And then we've been doing it for over 20 years. We have a large R&D section. So if you have a project, we work with some of the largest technologies companies in developing keys and security solutions. FEITIAN is a member of the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association, and we are a board member of FIDO. So we're moving this along now. So this is not going to be going in depth, but just giving you a quick overview that we have a variety of keys as well as cards that offer the passwordless FIDO2 solution. And the cards can have the added benefit of incorporating physical access and IoT in the same device. So instead of carrying multiple devices, it can all be off of the ID card. So if you have questions about that, let us know. Wanted to make sure that you knew that we have the links posted for the presentation and for the actual page where we're offering a BOGO offer, buy one security key, get the second one for no charge. So just make sure you use the code in there. We want to request and ask again if you could complete the survey that's at that same link, and it's posted on the announcements area. So please feel free to do that. I'm going to go through the last portion, and for questions, we're going to have to rush this one. I have one kind of skeptic, I guess, in the audience wants to know which ones of these are available now, or if they're available. So all the systems that we showed in that key area, they are available. And not only that, but they're FIDO certified. So if you have a need for a special key, let us know. Brandon, I'm just checking back. Did you get a question also?
No, I did not get a question this time.
Got it. Any final points you want to make just to check?
Just thank you for your attention. And I know this is a long webinar, but hopefully that we were able to provide some nuggets of information that you were able to take away. And thank you, Michael and Gautam, for the opportunity to work with you guys.
Appreciate it, Brandon. Gautam, do you want to say some closing remarks?
No, I just want to again thank Brandon for coming on to our channel and sharing their insight and wisdom. It was I learned a lot, so hopefully the audience did too. And go get the offer that Michael just shared. Take advantage of that. And thank you for joining.
Thank you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. We've been more than happy to assist you. Please take advantage of the BOGO offer. And we really would like to request and get your feedback on it. Has a few different questions. So anything you can do in that survey form will be greatly helpful to us. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Appreciate it. We're 1 minute and 30 seconds over. Thank you again, Brandon. Thank you, Gautam. And look forward to talking with you soon.
Thank you.